Hi friends, it's Deanna here today, and today we're going to use one of our favorite top patterns and hack it into a tiered maxi dress. So let's do it. Alright, so I am actually going to be using the breezy top pattern. I already constructed my top bodice. Now, if you can really use any bodice of any dress that you want to, as long as the waist ends up at, it has one of those seams that ends up at the waist, and then we can interchange that. So I've got that bodice already completed. So now what we're going to do is we're going to work on our tier skirt. I'm going to use 2 tiers, but if you want to do more than 2 tiers, you can always just cut it shorter and add more tiers, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so the first thing we've got to do is to know that there's 2 ways we can do this. Okay, so we want to basically create a maxi gathered skirt, and you can do that by grabbing either, there's a few Ellie and Mac patterns that come with a maxi skirt option, a gathered maxi skirt option, so you could grab one of those and already know, like, have the length that you want and have the width that you want. But you can also create your own by doing your measurements. So let me show you how I'm gonna measure and what I'm gonna do to end up with what I need, okay? So I'm gonna grab my measuring tape, and the first thing I'm gonna do is measure my waist. So I'm measuring my waist where I want my skirt to land, and I'm going to measure my waist, and then I'm going to double that measurement. So I'm going to cut a panel that is double the measurement. Now, you can cut one panel double the measurement and you'll have one seam line and you can just put it on the back, or you could cut 2 panels of each panel being the width of your waistline. So mine is a 30, so I can cut 2 panels of 30 inches each, and it'll be 1 panel for the front and 1 panel from the back, so on the side, so I have those side seams. Then you can add pockets and all that. Or if you just want to make one 60-inch panel and then just have 1 seam at the back, you can do that as well. So that's the first step. Sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. So measure your waist, and then you're going to double that measurement for your width of your skirt, okay? Now for the length, we're gonna grab our measuring tape. We're gonna start at where your waist is, where it's gonna hit you at, and we're gonna measure all the way down. Now, if you're doing more than 2 layers, you're gonna measure all the way down to where that first layer is gonna stop. Even if you're doing just 1 layer, just gonna measure where that layer stops. I'm gonna stop mine like right below my knee because I'm only doing 2 layers. So I want one to stop right below my knee and then another layer after that, a shorter layer. So you're gonna go and measure down to where you want your maxi first layer to stop. Okay, and then we're going to add, I'm going to add 1 inch because I want to have 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top and 1/2 inch seam allowance at the bottom, because I'm going to gather with clear elastic. So I kind of like to have a little bit of extra, not just a 1/4 inch allowance, just a little bit extra, so that way I can have a little bit of wiggle room if I need it. And honestly, when you're doing a maxi skirt, for me, I don't worry so much about the length because I always can take it in a little bit. I'd rather it be longer and have more wiggle room than make it too short and then you're like, oh, you know, I guess you could cut it to a midi and that'd be fine. But, you know, I'd just rather have extra space. So I'm gonna do double my waist for the width, and then the length that I want it to be plus 1 inch for my seam allowance. Now, then after that, we're going to measure our second tier or our second and third tier, depending on how many tiers you want to do. So you're gonna measure from where you stopped on that first tier and all the way down to wherever you want it to be. I'm going all the way down to my ankle because I'm going to do just 1 second tier. So you're gonna measure that, and then, and again, I'm gonna add 1 inch because I want that 1/2 inch seam allowance and hem allowance. So let's add, I'll add 1 inch to that. And usually when I'm cutting my fabric, if I have a little bit of extra fabric, I'll just cut it through, or, you know, sometimes I'll cut a little bit extra just to make sure I have enough. I'm just always on the cautious side. I don't know why. This is why I use patterns a lot, because then I don't have, it takes away the guessing work and I'm not like, did I cut enough? Anyway, now if you are using the pattern for this step, the pattern already has the measurements for the gather waistline, so you don't need to measure the waist. But the length, if you're not going all the way to maxi length, then you do need to measure what the length is that you want to do. Or you can go ahead and grab your pattern and cut that bottom off. Alright, so if you're using a pattern piece, then you are going to have to measure from the waistline to the pattern how long you want the pattern piece, and you'll have to cut that, cut the bottom off so you can make the next layer. Now for the next layer, like I was saying, you're gonna measure, how far, and then for the width, I like to do 2.5, so like 3. So for the top tier, you do 2 times your waist. For the bottom tier, I would do 3 times my waist. So if I have a waist of 30, I'm doing 60 for the top, and I'm doing 75 for the bottom, okay, the width. So if you're doing your pattern piece, usually your pattern piece is on the fold and it's cut 2, 1 for the front, 1 for the back, then I would cut 3 of those instead of just cutting 2. If that makes sense. Now, you can look at my dress when I'm done, and you can say, hey, I want more gathers, or I want less gathers, and then go from there. Really, this is not like a cut and dry, like it has to be a certain amount. It's just, it gives you more gathers if you add more, it gives you less gathers if you add less. And if I'm off by like an inch and I have like a little bit of extra fabric, I'll just add it. Or if I had like an inch less of fabric, I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna go with that. So it's very lenient. So let's go ahead and cut, and then we'll talk about how we're gonna piece it all together. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we can go ahead and grab those panels and sew them together at those raw edges, those sides, so we can make it one full panel. Well, 2 full panels. One for the top layer, one for the bottom layer. Now, if you're doing more than 2 layers, 2 tiers, then obviously you'll have 3 panels, 4 panels, however many panels you're doing. And we're gonna go ahead and sew those sides, right sides together. Alright, so remember I said I was going to gather with clear elastic? So that's what I'm doing. The first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and mark my halves, mark my bodice and my skirts, because I want to be able to gather them to fit. So I want them to be all, get it done before I gather, because then once I gather, it might be more difficult to see where my halves are and all that. So I'm marking my bodice, and then I'm gonna mark my skirts. All right, so now once I've marked it, I can go ahead and get ready to gather. So I'm gonna gather my first layer first. This is my my upper layer. This is my lower layer, which is my wider layer. And I'm gonna grab my bodice, and there's different ways you can obviously gather. You can gather however you wanna gather this up. Excuse me, I have to sneeze. You can gather however you want to gather, but you want this to be gathered the width of our bodice. So I'm going to gather with elastic, and I'm just going to show you really quickly. There's other tutorials on our YouTube channel about how to gather and stuff like that. So if you want to check that out, that's our next step to gather. I am using clear elastic not only because I find it easy to gather with, but also because I want to give it stability to the waist, so that way my skirt is not pulling so much on my top, especially because I'm using a thinner fabric. I'm using Rib Pointel, which is so yummy, soft, and cute. It kind of is like a, I feel like it's like a baby fabric, but you know what? I want the baby fabric on me, so I'm gonna use it. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead, and what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna grab my elastic and I'm gonna measure it the width of my bodice. This is how wide I want my skirt to be, and I'm gonna mark that. And usually I use a marker, but I don't have one right now. And you can either go ahead and leave like a 1-inch tail at the end of it to grab a hold of it. But I just like to, I don't cut it. I just leave it long. But I just need to make sure that it's marked correctly so that it's not going to mess me up by leaving it long. And that's why usually I use like a marker or something to mark it so that I know just exactly where my points are. So now I've quartered my what do you call it? My elastic, as you can see right here. Actually, that's not quartered. Hold on, what did I do? Oh, here's my half. Why do I have another clip over here? All right. There it is. So this is my beginning and this is my ending. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pin it to my skirt. So we're gonna start with this one. And I am going to, as I go to my sewing machine, I'm gonna put a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine and I'm going to stretch it out to gather my skirt. So I need the half of this because I need my quarters to find. This is what I was trying to find. I was trying to find my quarter and then I ended up just going to the end. So I will be stretching out all the way to my first quarter as I sew. So let me go over there and show you on my sewing machine. And this is why I like to mark my elastic, because if it comes off, then we don't really know where it's at. So I might go ahead and go look for my marker. That way I can mark my quarters on my elastic and I know for sure that I'm just right. So let me do that. Let's go over to the sewing machine. I'm gonna show you just exactly how I'm gonna do it. So the first layer is gonna be gathered the width of my skirt, of my top. And then my second layer, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to measure the bottom of my first tier, okay? And that's how wide I want my elastic, because I want to gather this bottom piece, the width of the bottom of my first tier, because I'm going to attach it to this tier. Okay, so I'm gonna, once I do that, do my first one, I'm gonna do the same exact thing for this bottom one, but the width of the first tier. Okay, so let's do all that. And I'm gonna go and fast forward so you don't have to see all that. But if you have questions about how to gather and you're like, I didn't really understand what she's doing, check out our videos and I'll try to add a link on our gathering videos so you can see how exactly it is that we gather with elastic. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started, and I am setting my stitch to a zigzag stitch, and I'm going to start where my beginning of my elastic starts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it under my sewing machine, that first quarter point right there that I marked, and I'm going to get my needle right on there. So when I start going, my needle catches my elastic. All right, and now I'm gonna go ahead and pull on that elastic as it will be gathering my skirt. And sometimes, like, I like to even half it more, grab it like in the middle and do it like that. And let's go. So now I'm gonna show you how it gathered it already. You see that? Nice and gathered. So now I'm gonna continue to do it the whole way around and do the same thing for my second layer. Again, measuring the elastic and then making the elastic gather it. So when we get to the end, they're matched up and I have my elastic here. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it. And we can move on to the next one. All right, if you want to, before you attach the second layer, you can go ahead and grab your skirt. I'm just gonna clip some of this thread. how easy it was attaching that elastic. You know, sometimes I feel like we think it's harder than it needs to be, but it really isn't too hard. I'm gonna grab my bodice and I'm just going to go ahead and attach my skirt to my bodice, my top layer. And the reason why I want to do that is because now if I do that now and I try it on and I'm like, wait a minute, I think it's a little bit too long, I can go ahead and cut the excess fabric now before I get to, you know, and add a second layer. So I think that's why I want to go ahead and sew it on now so I can try it on, especially because it's not a pattern. I just measured myself. So I want to make sure that I am right. Now, if you're using a pattern and you're confident that, you know, it is the length that you want it to be, then you can go ahead and attach the other layer first. I don't think it's much of a difference. You know, now I can look back where I left those little trims right here, my quarters, and I can just match those up, right sides together. And my skirt should fit just right because I gathered it the width of my bodice. And then I'm gonna go over to my serger because I'm gonna sew it on with a serger. Now, if you don't have a serger and you just have a sewing machine, a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine will be just fine. Some kind of stretch stitch on your sewing machine, or you can try out that stretch fabric. I'll link video review on it from Nye, and then so I'll link that. And then I'll also link a video that I did with my making a top with different stretch stitches and a stretch thread. So if you don't have a serger, you can go check those out. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew that on together, and then I'm just gonna do the exact same thing, like I said, to the bottom tier with the elastic. The width of the bottom of that first skirt, gather that bottom skirt, the width of that skirt, and then attach it just like I'm attaching this, hem it, and we'll be done. So I'm just gonna go do all that. I know you'll have this question, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to answer it right now. When I sew this on, I don't cut the elastic off. I encase the elastic in my seam allowance. So I go close enough that I encase that elastic in my seam allowance so it's still there for that stability that I need. Time to hem. Now make sure that you try it on before you hem it, so you know if you cut it right, if you need to hem it higher, how much do you need to hem. I'm just gonna go for like a 3/4 inch hem. I feel like that's all I need because I like my dresses to be a little bit longer. But yeah, so check your hem. We're gonna go ahead and hem and we'll be done. I'm probably going to also add like a little sash, just because I like to add a little something at the waistline. And I actually, honestly, while I'm talking to you all right here, I don't know, depending on how much fabric I have, I feel like I could have had more gathers on that bottom tier. I like it how it is now, but it's not very many gathers. So if you felt like it's not enough, like obviously when I'm gonna try it on and I'm gonna show it to you and I'll post pictures, if you feel like, you know what, I want more gathers than that, then I would say that last layer, that last tier, the bottom tier, do it double the width of that middle tier. I did it remember I did it 1.5, so I feel like it wasn't quite enough gathering. I think it's still gonna be good because it is a full dress. But if, like I said, if you wanted more gathers, then you would play with those. But honestly, this was super simple to figure out. So, you know, you can tweak it however you want to. If you want your gathers at your waist to be less or more or whatever, you can definitely do that. If you want your gathers, your last tier to be more gathered or less gathered. It really is up to you. But it's just nice to be able to make something, you know, yourself and think, hey, I made that. So I'm gonna go ahead and hem, and then go ahead and put the dress on, take some pictures, and share it with you all. All right, we are done with this gorgeous dress. I am super excited about it. I think it's super cute, and I can't wait to try it on and take some pictures for you all. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please comment, like, share, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know what you want to see. And also let me know if you enjoyed this tutorial and if you tried it. Come find us on Facebook and Instagram and share your makes with us, because we love to see what you're making and we love being inspired by you. And also it's great to be inspired by other awesome sewists out there who are making beautiful things. All right, I'm gonna go take some pictures and show it off. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Comment, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.